The main things to know is this A of t, or the A, that's just your ending amount. So it's always the ending amount equals, and then it's either the initial amount or the principal. Okay, so it's ending amount equals the initial amount, what you started with. And then the R, hopefully is pretty obvious, rate. T, again, pretty obvious, it's going to be time in years. So sometimes if you're looking for T, it'll just say how long. You have to know that that means years in these problems. And then the compound interest has one other, and it's an N, and that's the number of times it's compounded. So if it's compounded annually, that means it's the N is 1. Semi-annually would be 2, quarterly 4, monthly 12, daily 365. Those are pretty much the only ones that you would be able to see. Again, annually, semi-annually, quarterly, monthly, and daily. Those would be the different values for N. So even though this is a calculator, hey, you still have to practice. You have to know what all these things are. You have to know how to use the formulas, when to use which formula, hey, and what the values are and how to plug it into your calculator. So be sure you know all that as you're studying for this test on Friday. All right, so this first example gives you a population of frogs. It increases at an annual rate. How many will there be after 5 years? So you have to decide which formula. It's going to be a growth, increase. Okay, so we're going to use this formula right here. So it gives us the initial amount of frogs, the rate, and the time. So we're just looking for the ending amount. So A equals, the initial amount is 250, 1 plus 0.22 raised to the fifth. And then you just type that in your calculator. 250, you can do 1.22 or 1 plus 0.22. That one's pretty easy to do without the calculator. Sometimes they're not that easy. And then raised to the fifth. Now, what you have to know about this, you can't have 675.677 frogs. Okay, you can't have that many people, chairs, objects. When it is something, you have to truncate. That means you completely ignore the decimal. That 0.6 doesn't raise the next frog. 0.6 of a frog doesn't make you have 676 frogs. You have 675 frogs. And we've talked about that before this year. So you have to know when to truncate. When the directions say round to the thousandths when necessary, that is something you have to know. You have to know when it is appropriate and or necessary. Okay, so 675 frogs, you truncate. If that was people, rabbits, chairs, tables, whatever it is, you would just truncate it. Now, there's another question here. During what year will the population have doubled? I added 2 questions to it. This, during what year will the population have doubled? How long until it doubles? If the population was 250 in 2017, what year did it double? So you just have to know how to answer, what the answer is expecting. You can't say, well, I don't know what to do. You have to know according to how it is being asked. All right? So how we find that is still all the same. During what year will the population have doubled? So that means when is the ending amount 500 if the beginning amount is 250? Or you could really pick any number, okay? Doesn't necessarily have to be 250 to 500. It could be 1 to 2 or 10 to 20. You could pick whatever numbers you want right there. I'm just going to use the numbers given in the problem. We still have 1 plus 0.22, but now it's raised to the t. T is what we're looking for. All right, so lots of different ways to go about doing this problem. As far as work goes, what I'm expecting to see is the setup. This would be the work. This right here, that would be the work I would expect to see. After that, there's lots of different ways you can go about solving this problem. I don't like putting these word problems in Y1 and Y2. You can if you want, but if you practice solving them for T, it just kind of helps you with the non-calculator part because it's the same steps. Because in a non-calculator, you can't set one into Y1 and the other into Y2 and figure that out. You can't graph it very easily as far as non-calculator goes. So I would actually solve this for T. So divide by 250. You have to do that first. Again, if you're going to do it a different way in the calculator, fine. I would expect to see the setup for you to get any credit for the answer. After that, there's lots of different ways to going about solving it. So 2 equals, we can say 1.22 now to the t. whenever the variable's in the exponent. If it's non-calculator, you get like bases. If it's calculator, you've got to change it to a log. Even from this point, there's two different ways to go about it. You can change that exponential into a log, or you can take the log of both sides. Okay? This is b to the x equals y, so we could say log base b of 2 equals t. Or we can take the log of both sides, which ends up being the same, log of 2 equals, we can bring that t down now because of this law right here. Using this law right here, it's in this form. We're moving to that form right there. So this t I can bring down and say t log of 1.22. Using that law from 11.5. And now I just need to solve for t. So divide by log of 1.22. Again, not the only way to answer this question. Lots of different ways to go about it, but there is only one answer. You can do it a different way and get the same answer, that's fine. Different way and a different answer, that's not okay. So then when you do that, you should get t equals 3.486. Now, 3 different questions I have here. One is given, and then I added these other 2 so you know the difference between how to answer the question. During what year? During what year? It's going to be during the 3rd year. Because we aren't given an original year, so we can't say 19, 2000, whatever. We have to say the 3rd year. If the question is how long until the population doubles, that's when we do round to the 1,000, 3.486 years. If it gives you a year where the population was 250 and then says what year did it double, you would just add whatever the number is, the number out in front of the decimal, to that, and you would get 2020. So 3 different ways you can be asked a question. You have to be aware of what is being expected, okay, by looking at those words. All different types of answers. You do the same thing. You still have to solve for t no matter what you do. It's just a matter of how you answer it. So be sure you answer appropriately. Know when to round to the thousandths and when not to. Okay? All right, here we have a delivery van that depreciates. So something that depreciates is the same as decay. So we're going down. The end amount is going to be lower than the beginning amount. So we don't know the end amount. We know the beginning amount is 17.5. Then we know the rate is minus 0.11 to the 5th. And so we just type that in. 17,500, parenthesis 1 minus 0.11, parenthesis raised to the 5th. And you should get a number smaller than 17,500. If you don't, you've done something wrong. You should get $9,772.10. Now, one thing that some of you know how to do this, but some of you don't. Let's say we have the same problem. Let's just round that to, let's say, we want to know when was, or what was the rate if the van was worth $9,700 after 5 years, you bought it for $17,500. What was the rate? Okay? So this is one where you still have to divide by 17,500. That would cancel. And then you're trying to get rid of that 1 minus r to the 5th. You have to get rid of that 1 minus r to the 5th. You take the 5th root. Some of you don't know how to do that in the calculator. What you do, if you look under the math button, number 5 is x root. Okay, so this is if we're trying to get rid of a root that's something bigger than square root. Okay, we know if that's squared, we can take the square root, and there's a button for that. 3rd root, there's a button for that, but after that, it just says x root. So what we do is we would say 5, whatever root we're taking, math, and then we'd hit number 5 right there. So that's assigning 5 to the x. And then we could type that number in, whatever that is, 9,700. And we get that number. then we would subtract the 1, divide by -1, and you could get your rate. Okay? Subtract 1, divide by -1, because we need to get what r equals. And then obviously move the decimal over or multiply it by 100, and you get your rate. Okay, so I just worked that problem just with something else missing. The original problem, what was the final cost? The problem I made up right here was looking for the rate, which I changed this number a little bit, 9,700 from 9,772. So we got about the same rate. Okay, so that's just, some of you, I've found some people don't know how to use that button. I just want to make sure you know how to use that button on your calculator. All right, compounded continuously. So compound continuously right here. Now another thing to know that is E is not a variable for something. E is like pi. It's a value. There's a button on your calculator right above the natural log button. Okay? So how long will it take something to triple? Doesn't really give us any money values, but we can pick whatever number we want to triple. If we start with 3, or we end with 3 and we start with 1, that's triple. You want to start with 30, that means you started with 10. You want to start with 11, that means you ended with 33. Whatever number you want to triple. And then e to the r, 0.085 t. So again, that's the work. I would expect to see that setup. From this point on, lots of different ways to go about solving that. However you choose to solve it is up to you. But I have to see the setup. Okay, the setup is what's going to get you credit for the answer. If you just have an answer and no setup, you are going to get 0 points. Okay, no points without a setup. Now that 1, we really don't need that 1 right there, e to the 0.085t. Since it's e, we want to take the natural log of both sides, or just change it to a natural log, or y1 and y2, lots of different ways. So the natural log of 3 equals, again, we're using this. It's in this form. We're going to move to this form over here using that law number 4 right there. So we can say 0.085t natural log of e. The natural log of e is 1. Now you have a calculator, so if you don't know that, fine. You can plug it in, but the natural log of e is 1. That goes back to the first couple days of notes. So just solve for t, so that means divide by 0.085. And you get your t value to be 12.925 years. Again, this is when it would be appropriate to round to the thousandth. It does not say during what year, it says how long. If I said how long and you said third year, that doesn't make sense. How long does it take? 12.925 years. If it said in what year would it triple? The 12th year. If it gave you a specific year and then said in what year, then you would just add that 12 to whatever year it gave you. And then the last one, so compounded does not say continuous, so that means it's just going to be compound interest. And it says quarterly, so that means n is 4. Again, that is annually 1, semi-annually 2, monthly, quarterly 4, monthly 12, daily 365. Okay? Annually, semi-annually, quarterly, monthly, or daily are the types of how it can be compounded. All right, so it gives us the end amount is 8,000. The beginning amount is 5,000. 1 plus r, 0.16, over n, quarterly is 4, raised to the n, t, so 4t. So there's your work right there. From this point on, you can do this a lot of different ways. First, if you're I'm gonna solve it out and solve for t. I don't like y1 and y2 in these problems just because sometimes it can be so little or so big, it's hard to see on the graph. So you divide by 5,000. And then what I would do is, that's a lot of stuff that can get mixed up. So I would figure out what that is. So that I just have less to write. 1.04 to the 4t. It just looks a little bit nicer. And the less you have to put in parentheses in your calculator, the better. Okay. Now, if it doesn't end up being a nice number like that, you would either have to store it or scroll up and grab it, use that whole number. So now I would take the log of both sides. As long as I do the same thing to both sides, I can do that. My law number 4 allows me to bring that 4t down. So I have 4 times t times log of 1.04. So that right side is all multiply. So I need to get rid of the 4 and the log 1.04. Because that cancels, and I'm left with t equals. Now, when you type this in the calculator, it's important that that 4 log of 104 all stays together. So here we have log of 8 divided by 5. We need to close that. Divided by, we need to open 4 log 1.04. Close, close. And you get your answer. Okay? If you don't put the whole denominator in parentheses, it's going to divide the log 8 over 5 divided by 4. Then it's going to multiply. It's going to bring that log 0.104 up to the top, and that's not true. Okay? You have to keep it all in parentheses. So 2.996, and that's years. So notice it doesn't tell you years in the problem. You have to know that time is years in these problems. That is something you are